So about Yuta, Jujutsu Kaisen is a great example of making old ideas feel fresh again. They took the inner demon trope and somehow made it not feel overused. When Black Clover did it, everyone bashed the series for it, but I haven't ever seen a person make fun of Jujutsu Kaisen for it, even though they are basically the same. But Jujutsu Kaisen made slight alterations to the trope to make it more of their own, as well as the series having similarities to Bleach. I only realized this just now, but the first episode is really close to the first episode of Bleach. Ichigo and Itadori both get exposed to some supernatural stuff, and are put in a position to get involved in it. It's great at reusing old techniques, but also use ones never seen before, at least never seen in any series that I have seen. And it's the fact that it has two main characters. Well, technically it doesn't, but it also technically does. The first main character of the series was Yuta. He had the first volume be about him and his adventures when he first joined Jujutsu Tech. Yuta had the main character treatment in that volume because, well, he was meant to be the main character, but for some reason Akutami decided to scrap the idea slightly. Akutami decided to just make a whole new main character, that being Itadori, and that in itself isn't uncommon for authors to do. Sometimes people decide to scrap ideas or remake them at the start of their series because it might not work out long term, or they just had another idea pop in. What made it weird was that Akutami still made the first volume canon. Even though he kind of scrapped the first volume with Yuta in a way, he didn't get rid of it completely. He remade the story, but it was still in the same universe and timeline. Well, not really remaking it, more like Akutami just made a new story around the one he already made. I'm not entirely sure how much he planned it out, but I'm pretty sure he didn't start it with the intention of doing that. In a Q&A, apparently Akutami expected it to be a short series ending with the first volume, so everything there was as far ahead that Akutami had planned for the series. The rest just came afterwards when he decided to continue it. I mean, it all worked out in the end pretty well, but that's pretty impressive of Akutami. This is probably a stage most long-running series authors go through, where it ends up being way longer than planned. But Akutami restarting from the ground up in the same universe as his previous work is the first I heard about something like that. Naturally though, the characters in the first volume are playing different roles now. The second years right now were like the main cast of the first volume, but now they are more of side characters and don't have as big of a role as before. Of course that includes Yuta as well. It's interesting to see where Yuta is headed, since he was repurposed as a main character, so that's why I wanted to talk about today what Yuta will be doing now that he isn't a main character, and his role in the story. Before that though, like and subscribe for future content. It will be pretty hard to repurpose a main character, because their character would have been made with the intentions of the story revolving around them. The character would either need to be killed off entirely, or just nerfed a lot. It's not really the same, but like what happened to Naruto and Boruto, actually it is pretty similar now that I think about it. Besides the fact that Naruto's story is already over, actually Yuta's story is technically over kind of as well. Naruto might be the only other series to have the same situation, but yeah, their solution to the issue was one of the ones I said. Naruto got nerfed a lot and became a lot less prominent of a character. If Kishimoto didn't nerf him, it would be harder to progress Boruto's character. It makes sense, but that wasn't the route Akutami took with Yuta. Yuta is still very much alive and still really strong. Yuta is the second strongest sorcerer in the story right now, at least among modern sorcerers. The culling games is going on right now, and there are two other sorcerers in his colony that look pretty strong. There are still unknown sorcerers who got reincarnated, so there might be some really strong ones out there, but out of the current timeline characters, he's only weaker than Gojo, so it will be pretty hard to have Itadori overtake him. If I'm being honest, Yuta is more enjoyable than Itadori right now. It's largely due to how strong he is, but also how much his character has changed, since before he used to be really timid and unconfident in himself. So it's really cool seeing him be confident and not being depressed and stuff all the time. Itadori isn't a bad character at all though. He just hasn't really had that moment like Yuta has, so he's still more or less the same as he was at the start. I don't think Akutami has a way to move around this. I think at some point something will happen to Yuta. I don't think he'll die or anything. Besides top tier threats like Sukuna, I don't think he'll be that outclassed that he ends up dying. But something might end up happening that nerfs him, or puts him out of commission early, and the culling games is a perfect chance for Akutami to make that happen. So if it is happening, which is most likely, it will happen at some point in the culling game. We are still very early into it, so it might not be for a while, but don't be surprised when something happens to Yuta. That is pretty much all I had to say though. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe for future content. Peace.